In the bustling town of Fairview, the sun blazed overhead, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks where life moved at an unhurried pace. Fairview was the kind of place where everyone knew your name and every small event became the talk of the town. Children played in the spray of garden hoses, shopkeepers tended their displays with slow precision, and the air buzzed with the sound of work at the local coal yard. It was into this setting that Ethan Reynolds walked, a tall man in his early 40s with a calm demeanor and an unmistakable sense of purpose. Ethan had left Fairview many years ago, carving out a life for himself far from the quiet streets of his childhood. Today, he returned not just as a visitor but with a weight on his shoulders that most could never imagine. As he strolled down Main Street, the polished leather of his shoes clicking softly against the pavement, a few familiar faces turned to watch him pass. His tailored jacket and confident stride stood out in a town where practicality trumped style. Still, he greeted everyone he met with a warm smile and a courteous nod, his presence exuding both humility and quiet authority. His return to Fairview was meant to be understated, a chance to reconnect with his roots before revealing the truth about the new chapter in his life. Ethan's plan, however, unraveled when he crossed paths with Officer Mark Benson, a man whose ego was as overinflated as the badge he wore. Mark was a local fixture in Fairview, known for wielding his authority with a sharp tongue and a penchant for public displays of power. Spotting Ethan near the coal yard, Mark's curiosity turned quickly to smug amusement. "Well, he drawled, his voice carrying over the din of workers unloading heavy sacks of coal. "Looks like someone's back from the big city. What brings you home, Reynolds? City life not all it's cracked up to be." Ethan, maintaining his composure, responded politely, "Just visiting, officer. It's good to be back." But Mark wasn't interested in pleasantries. With a smirk that seemed to announce his intentions, he gestured toward the coal yard. "You know, I bet you've forgotten what real work looks like. Why don't you show these guys you're still one of us? Go on, give them a hand." The workers paused, their movements stilled by Mark's taunting tone. Some exchanged uneasy glances, while others simply watched, their faces inscrutable. Ethan stood silent for a moment, his calm gaze meeting Mark's challenging smirk. Without a word, he stepped forward, removed his jacket, and picked up one of the heavy sacks. The crowd murmured in surprise as he hoisted it effortlessly onto his shoulder and carried it to the truck. His movements were steady, deliberate, and devoid of any theatrics. He repeated the task, each time ignoring Mark's snide remarks and the awkward chuckles that rippled through the gathering. By the time Ethan had carried the last sack, the tone of the crowd had shifted. The initial humor in the situation had faded, replaced by a quiet respect for the man who had taken on the task without complaint. Ethan turned to Mark, his expression calm but resolute. "Anything else you need, officer?" he asked, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the onlookers. Mark, caught off guard by Ethan's composure, stumbled over his response, mumbling something inaudible before retreating with a forced laugh. Word of the encounter spread through Fairview like wildfire. By the next morning, the story was the talk of every cafe and corner store, amplified by the rapid spread of social media. Videos of Ethan, his jacket dusted with coal, circulated online under hashtags like #Colgate and #RespectMatters. The town quickly found itself divided. Some dismissed the incident as a harmless joke, while others condemned Mark's actions as an abuse of power and a public humiliation. Amid the uproar, Ethan retreated to the modest home where his mother, Helen, still lived. Sitting at the kitchen table, he recounted the day's events to her. Helen, a woman whose strength had been forged through years of hardship, listened intently. "You didn't deserve that," she said firmly, her voice tinged with both anger and pride. Ethan smiled faintly. "It's not about what I deserve, Mom. It's about what I'm here to do." Unbeknownst to most of Fairview, Ethan had recently been sworn in as the youngest governor in the state's history. His return to his hometown had been intended as a quiet visit, but Mark's ill-conceived stunt had thrust him into an unexpected spotlight. The sheriff, James Warren, was among the first to grasp the gravity of the situation. Summoning Mark to his office, he didn't mince words. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest," Sheriff Warren said, his tone sharp with frustration. "Do you even know who you humiliated yesterday?" Mark, dismissive as ever, shrugged. "Relax, Sheriff. It was just a joke." But the sheriff's glare darkened. "That joke, as you call it, might cost us. Ethan Reynolds isn't just some guy passing through. He's the governor." As the town buzzed with speculation and debate, Ethan made his next move. He called for a community meeting, to be held at Fairview's town hall. By the time the meeting began, the auditorium was packed to capacity, with residents standing shoulder to shoulder, their phones ready to capture every word. When Ethan stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. He didn't need to demand attention, his presence commanded it. Standing tall, his calm gaze swept across the crowd before he began to speak. "I came back to Fairview because this town shaped me," he said, his voice steady and clear. "Fairview taught me resilience, humility, and the value of community. But yesterday reminded me that there's still work to be done." He recounted the coal yard incident not to seek sympathy or shame anyone but to highlight a deeper issue, the importance of respect and dignity. His words carried an undeniable weight, challenging the town to reflect on its values. As Ethan's speech continued, the crowd listened intently. Some nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting admiration, while others squirmed uncomfortably in their seats. Among them sat Mark, slouched in the back, his confidence evaporating with each word. Ethan concluded his address with a powerful declaration. "As your governor, I am committed to ensuring that every community, big or small, embodies the values of respect and dignity. Because respect isn't optional, it's fundamental." The announcement hit the crowd like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the room as the realization set in. The man they had seen carrying sacks of coal was no ordinary visitor but their state's governor. Applause erupted, starting tentatively before swelling into a standing ovation. The room buzzed with energy, but Ethan's focus remained steady. Spotting Mark, he called out, "Officer Benson, I'd like a word." The room fell silent once more as Mark reluctantly stood, his discomfort evident. In the days that followed, Fairview began to change. Ethan's speech, coupled with his actions, sparked a renewed sense of community and accountability. The coal yard incident became a catalyst for conversations about leadership, humility, and the kind of respect that transcends status. Ethan's visit, though unplanned in its impact, reminded the town of its values and left a legacy that would be remembered for years to come. Through it all, Ethan remained true to his purpose, guided by a quiet strength and an unshakable resolve to lead by example. The events following the town hall meeting were a testament to the ripple effect of true leadership. Ethan Reynolds had not come to Fairview seeking admiration or confrontation, but the unintended spotlight brought his quiet determination to the forefront of the community's consciousness. The aftermath of his speech saw a flurry of activity across the town. Conversations that had long been whispered behind closed doors about fairness, respect, and the misuse of authority were now being spoken aloud in homes, shops, and even in the coal yard where the incident had occurred. Workers, inspired by Ethan's humility and integrity, began sharing stories of their own experiences with Officer Benson's heavy-handed tactics, painting a picture of a man who had consistently prioritized power over fairness. For Mark Benson, the days following Ethan's address were anything but easy. The once confident officer found himself the subject of scrutiny, not just from the sheriff's office but also from the very community he had long taken for granted. People who had once laughed along with his taunts now avoided his gaze, their smiles replaced by pointed looks of disapproval. At the coal yard, where he had tried to humiliate Ethan, the workers now worked with a renewed sense of pride, their glances at Mark filled with quiet defiance. It was a stark contrast to the control he had wielded over them, a reminder that respect, once lost, was not easily regained. Meanwhile, Ethan remained grounded in his purpose. He had returned to Fairview not just to reconnect with his roots but to fulfill a promise he had made to himself years ago. The town had shaped him in ways both painful and profound. It was in Fairview that he had learned the value of perseverance, watching his mother, Helen, navigate life with grace and resilience despite the odds stacked against her. It was in this town that he had felt the sting of prejudice and the warmth of community in equal measure. These experiences had forged the foundation of the man he had become, and now, as governor, he felt an obligation to use his position to uplift the very people who had once shaped his identity. Ethan's mother, Helen, had always been a source of strength in his life, and her influence continued to guide him. After the town hall meeting, she became an even more integral part of his mission in Fairview. Together, they began organizing small gatherings in the community, creating spaces where people could openly discuss their concerns and share ideas for improvement. Helen's presence at these meetings was a calming force, her wisdom and warmth encouraging even the most hesitant participants to speak up. This town has always been about its people, she reminded them. If we want change, we have to be willing to work for it together. Her words resonated deeply, sparking a collective determination to address the challenges Fairview faced. As the weeks passed, tangible changes began to take root. Inspired by Ethan's example, local businesses started implementing initiatives to promote fairness and equity. The coal yard introduced new policies to ensure better working conditions for its employees, and several shopkeepers pledged to support local farmers and artisans by sourcing their products locally. Even the school board got involved, introducing programs that emphasized respect, empathy, and community engagement as core values for students. These efforts were small but significant steps toward building a stronger, more inclusive Fairview. Ethan's presence in the town also sparked unexpected alliances. One of the most surprising developments came in the form of an unlikely partnership between Ethan and Sheriff James Warren. Initially wary of the governor's intentions, the sheriff had approached Ethan with a mix of caution and skepticism. "I've seen politicians come and go," he admitted during one of their conversations. "Most of them make promises they don't keep. What makes you different?" Ethan's response was simple but powerful. "I'm not here to make promises. I'm here to listen, to learn, and to do what I can to make a difference." Over time, the sheriff's skepticism gave way to respect, and the two men began working together to address issues of accountability and transparency within the local law enforcement. Amid these developments, Ethan's interactions with Mark Benson became a point of contention in the town. Many residents expected the governor to publicly reprimand or even call for the officer's dismissal. However, Ethan took a different approach, one that surprised even his closest allies. Rather than seeking retribution, he extended an olive branch to Mark, inviting him to one of the community meetings. "This isn't about punishment," Ethan explained to Helen when she questioned his decision. "It's about growth. If we're going to change this town, we need everyone to be part of that process, even those who've made mistakes." Mark's initial response to the invitation was one of defensiveness and disbelief. Accustomed to wielding authority without question, he struggled to understand why Ethan would offer him an opportunity to participate. But as the days went by, and the weight of his actions began to sink in, Mark found himself reconsidering. He attended the meeting hesitantly, sitting in the back with his arms crossed and his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. Yet as the discussions unfolded, he found himself drawn into the dialogue, listening as residents shared their stories and voiced their hopes for the future. By the end of the meeting, Mark was no longer an outsider looking in. He stood to speak, his voice unsteady but sincere. "I've made mistakes," he admitted, his words met with a mixture of surprise and cautious approval. "I want to do better, for myself and for this town." Mark's admission marked a turning point, both for him and for Fairview. His willingness to confront his shortcomings and seek redemption inspired others to do the same. Over time, he became an active participant in the town's efforts to foster unity and respect, working alongside Ethan and the sheriff to rebuild trust within the community. His journey from arrogance to accountability served as a powerful reminder that change was possible, even for those who had strayed far from the path. As the seasons changed, so did the spirit of Fairview. The town that had once been mired in division and complacency began to thrive, its residents united by a shared commitment to progress. Ethan's influence was undeniable, but he was quick to credit the community for the transformation. "This isn't about me," he told a reporter who visited Fairview to document its resurgence. "It's about what we can achieve when we come together with open hearts and open minds. Fairview's story isn't just mine, it's ours." By the time Ethan prepared to leave Fairview and return to the demands of his governorship, the town was a very different place from the one he had walked into weeks earlier. Its streets buzzed with energy and optimism, its people carrying themselves with newfound pride. As he stood on the steps of the town hall, addressing a crowd that had gathered to bid him farewell, Ethan's voice carried the same quiet determination that had defined his journey. "Fairview will always be home," he said, his words met with thunderous applause. "And as long as I have the privilege of serving, I will carry the lessons of this town with me, every step of the way." With those words, Ethan Reynolds left Fairview not as a man seeking his roots but as a leader who had inspired a community to find its strength. And though his journey continued elsewhere, the legacy of his time in Fairview remained, a testament to the power of humility, resilience, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest towns could achieve greatness when guided by respect and unity. As Ethan Reynolds departed Fairview, his impact lingered like the faint scent of blooming wildflowers in the spring air, a quiet yet profound reminder of renewal. Though his physical presence was gone, his vision had sown seeds of change that continued to sprout across the town. Residents who once felt voiceless were now finding ways to participate in shaping their community. The coal workers, for instance, emboldened by Ethan's dignity and the support he had shown, formed a workers' committee to advocate for better conditions and fair wages. This act of solidarity became one of the many ways Fairview began to redefine itself, turning individual struggles into collective strength. Mark Benson, who had once symbolized the unchecked authority that held Fairview in a stagnant grip, had undergone a transformation that no one could have predicted. His earlier apology at the community meeting had been a small step, but it opened a door he hadn't realized existed. With encouragement from Sheriff James Warren and other townsfolk, Mark began attending town discussions regularly, often quietly observing but occasionally offering insights that surprised even himself. He took up the task of improving relations between law enforcement and the community, organizing listening sessions where residents could air grievances or share concerns. At first, attendance was sparse, but as trust grew, so did participation. Each session became a space for healing and understanding, and Mark began to feel a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. Meanwhile, Ethan, now back in the capital, was as busy as ever in his role as governor. Though his schedule was packed with meetings, legislative sessions, and public appearances, he made it a point to stay connected with Fairview. He regularly called his mother, Helen, for updates on the town, her warm voice a grounding presence amidst the whirlwind of politics. "They're doing well, Ethan," she would say with a hint of pride. "You'd be amazed at what they've accomplished. That town is waking up, one step at a time." Ethan also remained in contact with Sheriff Warren and the Workers' Committee, offering guidance and leveraging his position to support their initiatives whenever possible. To him, Fairview was more than just a town, it was a blueprint for how even the smallest communities could thrive with the right foundation of respect and collaboration. One of the most poignant outcomes of Ethan's time in Fairview was the transformation of its youth. Inspired by Ethan's story and the dignity with which he carried himself, many young people began to envision futures beyond the narrow confines of their town. Schools incorporated leadership and civic engagement programs, with teachers encouraging students to dream big while also fostering pride in their roots. A group of teenagers, moved by Ethan's speech, started a community service initiative called Fairview Forward, which focused on projects like cleaning up public spaces, tutoring younger children, and helping elderly residents with household chores. Their energy and optimism became a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that the next generation could carry the torch of progress even further. Amid all this, Helen Reynolds continued to be a quiet force in the community. Known for her wisdom and kindness, she became a mentor to many, her kitchen table often doubling as a counseling hub where people sought advice over cups of tea. Helen's ability to listen without judgment and offer practical guidance endeared her to everyone, from young mothers struggling to balance work and family to older residents grappling with loneliness. Her connection to Ethan added an air of reverence to her presence, but Helen remained humble, always redirecting praise to the people of Fairview. Ethan might have sparked the flame, she would say with a knowing smile, but you all are the ones keeping it alive. Not all was smooth sailing, however. Resistance to change lingered in certain pockets of the town. A small but vocal group, led by a few disgruntled business owners and longtime skeptics, began spreading rumors that the changes happening in Fairview were mere publicity stunts orchestrated by Ethan to boost his political career. They labeled the workers' committee as troublemakers and accused Sheriff Warren of abandoning his duties to cater to idealistic nonsense. These detractors often gathered at the local diner, grumbling over their coffee about the good old days and dismissing the progress around them. But their voices, while loud, were increasingly drowned out by the collective efforts of a town that refused to turn back. Ethan, aware of these criticisms, chose to address them head-on during one of his monthly virtual check-ins with the community. Speaking directly to the residents of Fairview, he said, "Change is never easy, and it's not always welcomed by everyone. But the question we have to ask ourselves is this: are we willing to sacrifice progress for the sake of comfort? Are we willing to let fear hold us back when we have the opportunity to build something better?" Fairview's journey is proof that we're capable of more. Let's not let the noise of doubt overshadow the music of possibility. Those words resonated deeply, silencing much of the opposition while reaffirming the commitment of Fairview's champions. Sheriff Warren, bolstered by Ethan's support, doubled down on his efforts to rebuild trust and transparency within law enforcement. Under his leadership, the department implemented community policing practices, assigning officers to specific neighborhoods to foster familiarity and cooperation. These measures, though simple, had a profound impact, turning once hostile interactions into opportunities for connection and understanding. Mark Benson, too, became a symbol of redemption in Fairview. His transformation from a man fueled by arrogance to a community advocate willing to shoulder the consequences of his past actions inspired many. He often volunteered his time to support the initiatives led by the youth of Fairview, his presence at events a visible reminder that change was possible for anyone willing to take the first step. Over time, even those who had been his harshest critics began to acknowledge his growth, and Mark found himself earning the respect he had once tried to demand. As Fairview flourished, Ethan's example began to ripple beyond the town's borders. News outlets picked up the story of the small-town governor who had quietly revolutionized his hometown, sparking discussions about the importance of grassroots leadership. Other communities reached out to Fairview for advice, eager to replicate its successes. For Ethan, this was both humbling and validating, a confirmation that his efforts, rooted in authenticity and respect, had the potential to create lasting change. By the time a year had passed since Ethan's return to Fairview, the town had undergone a remarkable transformation. Its streets buzzed with activity, its people carried themselves with a newfound pride, and its future seemed brighter than ever. The lessons learned during that pivotal time became the bedrock of its identity, that respect and dignity were not optional, that true progress required collective effort, and that even the smallest towns could shine brightly when guided by unity and purpose. Ethan's legacy in Fairview was not just one of leadership but of empowerment. He had shown the town that its strength lay not in the hands of one person but in the hearts of its people. And as Fairview continued to grow, it carried with it the indelible mark of a man who had dared to believe in its potential, a man whose quiet resolve had turned a moment of humiliation into a movement of hope. As Fairview entered its second year of transformation, the town became a living testament to the enduring impact of leadership rooted in humility, resilience, and respect. The changes, though initially slow and met with resistance, had blossomed into a thriving community effort. The coal workers, once resigned to grueling conditions, now spoke proudly of the improvements they had fought for and achieved. Local businesses, inspired by the newfound unity, began reinvesting in the town, offering jobs and opportunities that brought a sense of hope to families who had long struggled to make ends meet. Fairview was no longer defined by its struggles but by its capacity to overcome them. Ethan Reynolds remained a steady presence in the town's journey, even from afar. His role as governor had grown exponentially, yet he never allowed the demands of his office to distance him from Fairview's people. Monthly calls turned into quarterly visits, each time reigniting the spark of determination that he had first planted. These visits were not grand political spectacles but quiet, meaningful interactions that reminded everyone why they had begun this journey. During one of his speeches, Ethan encapsulated the essence of Fairview's transformation: a community isn't built by a single leader or a single moment. It's built by every individual who chooses hope over fear, action over apathy, and unity over division. Mark Benson, once a symbol of everything wrong in Fairview, had become one of its most vocal advocates for progress. His redemption arc was not just a personal triumph but a beacon of hope for others who believed change was out of reach. Mark's story, alongside Ethan's leadership, proved that transformation was possible even for those who had made grave mistakes. His efforts to bridge divides between law enforcement and the community brought a newfound trust that had been absent for decades, allowing for deeper collaboration and understanding. The youth of Fairview were perhaps the most striking embodiment of this change. Energized by Ethan's example and the support of their elders, they became the town's beating heart. Their community service projects expanded, touching every corner of Fairview and even inspiring nearby towns to launch similar initiatives. These young leaders, filled with optimism and a sense of purpose, carried the torch of progress with a confidence that promised a bright future for Fairview and beyond. Looking back, Ethan often reflected on how a single moment of humiliation had sparked a movement. The incident with Mark had not been a curse but a blessing in disguise, a catalyst for awakening Fairview to its potential. The town's transformation was not about him, but about the resilience, strength, and faith of its people. They had shown him, and the world, what a community could achieve, and it united around shared values of respect and dignity. Fairview stood as a reminder that true change begins with a single step, a moment of courage, a spark of hope, and a commitment to growth. It was a testament to the power of humility and faith, proving that even in the face of adversity, a brighter tomorrow is always within reach. Relating the story of Fairview and Ethan Reynolds to my own life, I find myself reflecting on the power of humility, resilience, and community in overcoming challenges. Like Fairview, life often presents us with moments where our dignity or abilities are questioned, where we face adversity or judgment that threatens to diminish our sense of self-worth. However, Ethan's response to humiliation reminds me of the importance of responding to challenges with grace and purpose. Instead of retaliating or shrinking in the face of adversity, he transformed a moment of vulnerability into a platform for change, not just for himself, but for an entire community. This lesson resonates deeply, as it highlights that every challenge carries the seed of an opportunity for growth and transformation, not just for oneself but for others as well. In my own life, there have been moments where I've felt underestimated or misunderstood, whether at work, within my family, or in social circles. In those times, it's tempting to react with frustration or defensiveness, but Ethan's story teaches a different path, the power of quiet dignity and focused action. When confronted with humiliation or hardship, the best response isn't to escalate the conflict but to ground oneself in a higher purpose, to focus on the broader impact of one's actions. Ethan's decision to carry the coal sacks with composure and resolve transformed what could have been a moment of shame into a powerful demonstration of strength. This reminds me to choose responses that reflect my values and integrity, even when it's difficult. Another important takeaway is the role of faith in navigating challenges. Ethan's calm and purposeful demeanor stemmed from his internal resolve and his belief in the values he stood for. In my life, I can draw on my own faith to find that same grounding. Trusting that there is a greater plan, even when the immediate situation feels unjust or overwhelming, can provide the strength to act with grace. Prayer, reflection, and seeking guidance from Allah can help anchor me during difficult moments, reminding me that every trial is an opportunity to grow closer to Him and to reflect His mercy and wisdom in my actions. The story also underscores the transformative power of community and collaboration. Ethan didn't rebuild Fairview alone, it was a collective effort fueled by his example and the willingness of others to embrace change. In my life, I see parallels in the importance of building and nurturing relationships, whether at home, in my workplace, or within my neighborhood. When faced with challenges, reaching out for support and creating spaces for dialogue and mutual understanding can lead to solutions that benefit everyone. By prioritizing unity and encouraging others to work together, I can help foster an environment where resilience and growth are shared goals. Finally, the narrative reminds me to keep the bigger picture in mind. Just as Ethan's story wasn't about proving himself to Rick but about inspiring an entire town to embrace respect and dignity, I must focus on long-term growth and impact rather than immediate vindication or success. Life's setbacks can be stepping stones when approached with the right mindset. Whether it's a professional setback, a personal challenge, or a moment of self-doubt, I can remind myself that my response not only shapes my own path but can also inspire and uplift others around me. To apply these lessons to my current life, I aim to approach challenges with patience, trust in Allah, and a commitment to integrity. When faced with criticism or judgment, I will focus on my values and the greater good rather than immediate reactions. I will seek support from my community and family, remembering that collective effort is often the key to overcoming hardship. Most importantly, I will strive to reflect dignity, compassion, and resilience in my actions, knowing that true strength lies in staying rooted in purpose and faith, even during life's toughest moments.